After having raised venture capital from the best of the best, after helping countless SaaS founders with their pitch decks, I've learned that the most critical set of slides in your pitch deck are your go-to-market slides. Here's the reason. The go-to-market slides actually convey and communicate to your potential investors that if they were to give you the money, you know what to actually do with it. And that's the biggest question they have, besides the fact that, is this market big enough? Now, in this episode, I'm gonna walk you through the 3 key go-to-market slides that you need to have. I'm gonna actually draw out what goes in them. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to structure your go-to-market slides, what goes in them. That way, when you go to investors and you pitch them, the level of conversation you're gonna have, the way you're gonna show up representing your business is gonna be dramatically different, and you'll be able to raise that next round. And by the way, 50% of the founders that I work with are bootstrapped and 50% are venture-backed. So if you happen to be a bootstrap founder, what I recommend is you still watch this video because you're never gonna have to raise, but have yourself and your team create these 3 slides, because you'll be able to see your business through the eyes of an investor and see where the strengths and weaknesses are. Intro. What's up, everybody? Welcome to Unstoppable. I'm TK, and on this channel, I help SaaS founders like you grow your SaaS businesses faster with an unstoppable strategy. Now, if you're new to this channel, welcome. I drop an episode every single Sunday with actionable strategies and tactics from the trenches on how to grow your SaaS business faster. So if you're new, be sure to hit that subscribe button and that bell icon. You'll get notified every single time I drop an episode with the TK Energy. Now, if you're already part of this channel, if you're part of this community, if you're part of my SaaS go-to-market coaching programs, we just hit 48,000 subscribers. So by people, thank you so much. And also, I'm just super happy to see you over here. I seriously love you guys. So for my last company, ToutApp, I raised from some of the best venture capital firms. They include 500 Startups, Founder Collective, Andreessen Horowitz, Jackson Square Ventures. I even raised from some of the best angels out there, including Scott Bannister, Josh Baer, Esther Dyson, and more. Through that whole journey, I learned how to raise venture capital. Now, fast forward to today, I've now worked with over 250 SaaS founders, and half of them being venture backed. I've worked with a lot of founders on a lot of pitch decks who have now gone on to raise funding. Through all of that, through that journey, I learned that these 3 slides I'm gonna walk you through in your pitch deck are the most critical components to a successful raise. 1, it helps you show up with the right level of understanding about your own business so you can represent the business. And 2, it communicates to the investor, you know what you're going to do with that money if you were to raise it. So we're gonna break it down into 3 key slides. I'm gonna walk you through each of them. If you're excited to dig into slide number 1, go ahead and smash that like button for the YouTube algorithm. It just really likes it when you do that, and so do we. And let's dig right into it. So principle number 1, the first critical slide in terms of your go-to-market slides is to highlight your traction. Now, one of the things I've seen in countless pitch decks, and I made the same mistake before, is we tend to bury this slide all the way at the 8th slide, where we say, here's how much revenue we have, here's how it's growing, here's what it looks like, here's how we're getting that revenue. And what I always recommend is this should go as early as possible. Here's the reason. When investors are thumbing through the preview deck or you're starting to get into the presentation, investors are wondering in their mind, is this thing for real or is this all theoretical? Should I trust it? Do I trust what they're saying? Is this coming from a place of conviction? So I always like to put the traction slide as early as possible. That way you say, hey, listen, everything that I'm about to say to you is based on all this data and traction that we have in the business. This is our traction, here's what we've learned, and based on that, here's what we have conviction around what's ahead for the company, the opportunity, the target market, and everything else I'm going to tell you about. As soon as you start to frame it that way, you're gonna come into the investors' minds in a whole different way. And 2, the investors are gonna stop wondering if they should take your word for face value or if it's actually just you embellishing, because they'll know exactly what your traction looks like. So one of the biggest things that I try to make sure founders have in their traction slide is some sort of a revenue traction graph showing exactly how your revenue growth has been going. In addition to that, I like to call out specifically who your ICP is, what your value proposition is. Like, we're selling to salespeople and we help them generate more pipeline. And here's our revenue growth. And you should also highlight what your average deal size is and what your customer acquisition cost is. If you can start early on in the presentation with just this snapshot, everything else that comes after this is going to be that much more powerful. If you don't start with this and you bury it later, or worse, you don't mention it, they're gonna be wondering if this is real or not, especially in that preview deck that you send where you're trying to get that first meeting. And so one of the biggest things that I always say is have some form of attraction slide. If you're including it in your preview deck, you'll have to use some sort of lens to figure out if you wanna share all of that data or some of that data, but you need to actually communicate what kind of traction you have, what specific ideal customers you're going after, why they're buying, that's your value proposition, what average deal sizes are, which communicates how you're gonna grow the company, what kind of model, is it product-led, sales heavy, or marketing heavy, and what your customer acquisition cost is. And this last one is probably one of the toughest ones, and founders often leave out, but as soon as you can start to mention this, then they start to piece it together and like, oh, it costs them this much to get a customer, they wanna drive growth. If I write them a $3 million check or a $5 million check or a $10 million check or a $100 million check if you're a pre-seed AI company, then I'll know exactly what they're gonna be able to do with it. That last part was a joke, depending on when you're watching this episode, because right now it's kind of crazy with AI companies. This traction slide clearly articulates, hey, here's what we know about the business, and here's why we have our go-to-market instrumented. This is a critical slide that you need to have as early as possible in the deck. Once you have that, then we get into your second slide that you need to have. And the second slide is your go-to-market strategy slide. And the go-to-market strategy slide is a little bit of a misnomer because in a way, you've already communicated your go-to-market strategy right here. You've already communicated what your ICP is, what your value proposition is. That's half of the go-to-market strategy. So in this slide, you're really gonna double click on saying, hey, we really know how we're gonna go to market, how we have been going to market, and how we're gonna continue to scale that. So for example, during my Series B raise, where I raised from Andreessen Horowitz, we raised $15 million. One of the slides I had for my go-to-market strategy, the second slide, was talking about how outbound was working really well for us. So we had the traction slide, we showed the growth, but then we said, hey, by the way, the real big thing that's making our go-to-market strategy work is outbound. And here's the stats around that outbound. Here's how many opportunities we're generating from that outbound. And here's how it's impacting our average deal sizes and our revenues. So we alluded to exactly how our go-to-market strategy operates to generate pipeline. And that's super important. And the more robust you can be about how you're generating pipeline, the more likely you're going to get conviction from investors, because ultimately they're trying to figure out, is there a real market here? Do you have a real solution? And can you compete in the market and generate pipeline, get attention, and convert it to revenue? That's it. And so in order to do that, the more you can explain exactly how your go-to-market strategy is working and how it's functioning, the more likely you will be to actually be able to raise that next round. So let's get into specifics for this slide. Now, I've seen this slide explained in different ways, but I'm gonna give you what the core components are that you need to have. The core components that you need to have is what's the channel, how much leads are you generating, and how much revenue and pipeline have you generated out of that channel. That's a broad-based view of what you should highlight in this go-to-market strategy slide. So in my specific example, we would have said we did outbound, and we're generating 5 to 10 opportunities per week, and about 20% are converting to revenue, and we give the revenue number. So that's how we communicated it. Now, in a more robust go-to-market strategy, you can say, well, we also have social, and we have ads, and we're generating, say, 100 leads per week, and through social, we're generating 50 per week, and you can start to get into how much pipeline and how much revenue you're generating out of those channels. If you start to explain in this level of detail, then investors are gonna see you actually have a go-to-market strategy right down to channels, and you know if they were to write you a $3 million check, exactly how you're gonna be able to deploy it, which is the biggest thing. They're trying to de-risk the fact, hey, will they be able to know what to do with their money, or do they not know and they're gonna have to figure it out and they have to hire a VP of marketing? One of the things that I do when I work with founders for both of these slides is I always have them do a go-to-market diagnostics. That's this spreadsheet right over here. They plug in all of their numbers, and out of that, it automatically automatically calculates what's their average contract value, what's their CAC, and what are the things they need to do to improve their go-to-market. So it's super easy to calculate when you work with me. The other thing that I do with founders is I have them look at this dashboard. And this dashboard gets into the details of exactly where they're generating pipeline from. And we teach them how to use a platform that automatically calculates all this for them. So it's super easy, right down to what channel, what's the conversion rate, and how much pipeline and revenue gets generated. That's this dashboard right over here. If you're instrumenting your SaaS business the right way and you have the right go-to-market strategy, then it's super easy to calculate these things and plug it in. And you have to lay the groundwork for that kind of go-to-market strategy. And once you have that, then you can communicate it in a slide like this. And that way, the investors aren't wondering, is this guy for real? They're like, no, there's traction. They're not wondering, do they actually know what they're doing? Or are they just going to take my money and then say, I'm going to hire a VP of marketing because I don't know what go-to-market strategy is. Instead, they're going to be like, oh, tell me more about this channel. Like what's working, what's not. That's pretty good numbers. Can that be improved? Or how would you improve it? They get into buying questions. They get into thinking about, oh, if I were to write this check, how could I help them be even better? Because this is pretty good. I bet I can make it better. And investors lean in and get more excited. So those are the first 2 slides that you need. Now let me pause here for a second before I go to the third slide, which brings it all together. I start to see the power in this. I want to highlight 2 things. Now, regardless of whether you're going to go raise money or you're a bootstrap founder, if you have just these 2 slides on your business, you are going to have a deeper understanding of your business. If you have these 2 slides, it means you actually have a working go-to-market strategy. If you have these slides and you put it in front of an investor or a potential buyer, you're gonna approach that conversation with a level of swagger and a level of confidence unlike anything else. And that's what you really need. Everyone talks about the black arts of fundraising, but some of it can be faked. But when you actually have these things, you don't need to fake anything. You literally show up like, look, we're awesome. You'd be lucky to be part of this because we did the hard work to flesh out our go-to-market strategy and start executing on it. And now we're ready to scale it. So if you're starting to see the power in this, can I just get a yes in the comments below? And also smash that like button for the YouTube algorithm. It just loves it when you do that. And so do we and my team. We put a lot of love into these videos. Also, if you're in this stage where you're like, hey, TK, I need a go-to-market strategy. Ours isn't instrumented in this way. It's not working. Or I thought I could just fake it and raise money and then build a go-to-market strategy. But turns out all of my competition, all the other startups that founders are building and are going to investors with already have a go-to-market strategy. So I'm not competitive. So I need to get competitive. If you're in any one of those stages and you'd like to revamp your go-to-market strategy and get growth going so you show up to investors with slides like this, then be sure to check out my SaaS go-to-market coaching program. I'll tell you more about it at the end of this episode. You don't have to go anywhere right now. I'll link to it below as well. Let's go into principle number 3. But before we do that, make sure you smash that like button and let's dig into it. You've done traction. Like, here's what we know so far. Number 2, you've shown that you understand your go-to-market strategy and the machine and how you're operating it. Number 3 answers that ultimate question of when you give us $3 million or $5 million or $10 million or $100 million if you're a pre-seed AI company, here's what we're gonna do with it. So number 3 is essentially your goals. This is the slide that really brings together like, look, here's our market opportunity, here's our traction, here's our go-to-market strategy, here's our vision, and by the way, here's how much we're raising. If we were to raise, here's what next year and the next year plus that and the next year plus 2 looks like in terms of growth. You start to talk about what your targets look like. And you start to say, look, we're raising X dollars, and based on that, here's the growth we're gonna do next year and the subsequent year based on our understanding of our go-to-market machine and how we are scaling it, and based on our market and how big the market is. Now, you've done all the homework for the investors. You said, what's the traction? How are you getting there? And how are you gonna grow? And when you have these 3 critical slides, you make the investors' jobs 10 times easier, and you have a much more constructive conversation about how you're gonna grow the company, and more importantly, what you're gonna do with the money. Because remember, ultimately for investors, they're trying to figure out, if I put in $3 million now, will they hit their next milestone so they can raise the subsequent round? That's it. And now you are answering that for them to help them understand, are they gonna hit it? This varies from stage to stage. If you're super early, you need to show some understanding of these components, and you may not have all of the answers, but you still need to show that you understand this. If you're at the seed stage and you're trying to raise a Series A, you have to have some of this. If you're at a Series A going to B, then it gets even more robust. If you're going from a B to a C, it really becomes a giant spreadsheet that they look at. So depending on the stage you go at, you still need each of these components to show that you understand what to do with their money, but also you need to go into greater levels of detail depending on how much more you're raising. And that's why these 3 slides make such a huge difference in the fundraising process. So to recap, the 3 most critical slides you need to have in your pitch deck, especially for your go-to-market, so you can show investors you'll know what to do with their money. Number 1 is your traction slide. It has your ideal customer profile, your value proposition, your ACV, and your CAC, and it shows your revenue growth and traction. Number 2, you need to show your go-to-market strategy in terms of what channels you're operating in, what the yield is from those channels, and how they can be scaled with more money. And number 3, you need to show what your goals are. Given the amount you're raising, what next year's revenue and the subsequent year's revenue is gonna look like, it needs to tie together with how you can pour more money into these channels and open new channels that are showing to be promising to continue to scale that go-to-market machine. You have these 3 slides. 1, you are gonna have a deeper understanding of your business. 2, you are gonna show up differently with a different level of swagger in front of investors. And 3, investors are going to get an answer out of your pitch deck on the biggest question they have is, will these guys know what to do with the money? And is there a big enough market for them to go after it? That's it. Now you know what these 3 slides are. But if you don't know exactly how to build a go-to-market strategy, if you don't have all these components, if you don't have your ideal customer profile, if you don't know what your value proposition is, if you don't know what channels you can spin up beyond your existing network, if you don't know exactly how to pull all this data and calculate it and show it in a cohesive way in a pitch deck, if you don't know how to measure and have the right dashboards in terms of the channels, this is exactly why I created my SaaS go-to-market coaching program. My SaaS go-to-market coaching program teaches you how to build a scalable go-to-market strategy. It fleshes out your ideal customer profile. Then it teaches you how to build a manifesto. This is your value prop. This is your unique message, your strategic narrative. By the way, a lot of the manifesto turns into the story in your pitch deck as well. And then we teach you how to run a Broadway show. And the Broadway show is a consistent set of sales and marketing activities that you run to actually generate pipeline. And we teach you how to track different channels and operate in different channels and scale it. And when you have that, when you have the key pieces in place and a proper strategy and you're executing on it, then these slides are easy to build because you actually have the go-to-market strategy and it's easy to tell that story. This is why I have all these tools inside of the program that helps founders take the pieces they're doing and really get the right data so they can present that right story, and pitch decks become that much easier as well. So it's an incredible program. If you'd like to work together one-on-one inside of the go-to-market program to build your go-to-market strategy, execute on it, bake it in your pitch deck, and accelerate the path to the next stage of growth for your SaaS business, just go to tkcater.com/GTM. tkcater.com/GTM. And you get all of the details in that page. And in that page, if it sounds like we're a good fit, just fill out the little form and we'll get on a call. The greater the fit, the greater the results. So that's why we get on a call to make sure that we're the right fit to actually work together and that we can actually help you. If it sounds like we can help you, then we're off to the races. We get started right away. And within 3 weeks, we're able to help you revamp your go-to-market strategy and start running your Broadway show, start generating pipeline, and also prepare for your fundraise. So just go to tkcater.com/GTM. If you got value from this video, please smash that like button for the YouTube algorithm. It just loves it when you do that. And so do we. My team and I put a lot of love into these videos. Also, if you have a fellow founder, a team member, if you're part of a Slack group or WhatsApp group that would get value from this video, please share this with them. We want to help as many SaaS founders as possible on building incredible SaaS companies. That's why I do this. Also, I drop an episode every single Sunday with actionable strategies and tactics from the trenches on how to grow your SaaS business faster. If I wasn't in the trenches, I would not be able to go to this level of detail to tell you about how to grow your SaaS company. And I bring you videos like this every single Sunday. So be sure to hit the subscribe button and the bell icon. That way you'll get notified every single time I drop an episode. And lastly, remember, everyone needs a strategy for their life and their business. When you are with us, yours is gonna be unstoppable. I'm TK, and I'll see you in the next episode, or inside of the SaaS Go-to-Market Coaching Program. Link is below. This is gonna be a fun episode.